Hey, welcome to JOURNEYS Webcast. Thank you for tuning in. This is my 14th episode. Started this in mid-April. I am fired up that we continue bringing awesome people, great connections from all over the world. You're going to love my guest today. But for those of you, I'm just curious. I'm going to put up a little poll to see how many of you, if this is the first time you've been to the JOURNEYS podcast or webcast, and just give you a little bit of update. So here I am still in San Diego. The crazy Corona, we used to call this the adventure and discovery in the time of Corona. And it really is an adventure. Things have getting even crazier, aren't they? I mean, we're seeing even in San Diego, which was really in the, we had, compared to the rest of California, we've always had a low case count, low numbers of deaths, and but the numbers are not looking very good. Yet everybody seems to be a little bit more relaxed. But anyway, so JOURNEYS Web, that was the idea of this the first time, is this weekly live stream that we would do and bring entrepreneurs, travelers, chefs, musicians. That's what we've got today. Authors, speakers, and just ordinary people living extraordinary lives to come together for some storytelling, inspiration, idea sharing, and of course that bond, that human connection. So that's what we're doing. We are doing music. I want to give update because those of you who've been here, I can see that at least 85% of you have been on my webcast before, so that's fantastic. For those of you who've been following, I had this episode about 3.5 weeks ago of vertigo, what turned out to be vertigo. I didn't know it at the time. I'm still not feeling 100% right. I walk around like I've got a perennial hangover, and that's not necessarily a good thing. But I had an MRI last week. I go see the crazy doctor with the Epley chair on Wednesday, so we'll get a further update there. Also, since it is kind of a music thing, somebody wrote me an email a couple weeks ago, and I kind of it got lost in the fold, and I was going through my thing, and they asked me about the guitar that's back here and if I really play it. So I'm not the musician here. I'm a hack. But because we're having a little bit of a percussive kind of conversation today, I'm going to play you a couple chords so you can see I really do. Hold on. All right, forgive me. All right, it's kind of a little punky thing, it's apropos. Okay, now let's get to the real musician here. Let me tell you, get that thing in focus here, a little bit about my guest today. I like to say he's gone from rock and roll stardom to becoming the godfather of the Iceland music scene, and that's me talking, not him. Okay, so he can dispute that, but I will not even attempt to pronounce his first name, but when he comes on, he will. But Siggy, as he tells us, it's okay for those that are Icelandic language challenge. Baldursson he's the managing director for Iceland Music Office, and this is a project that I think funded part by the government that helps Icelandic music find various opportunities and audiences around the world. He's a veteran musician where outside of Iceland, for a lot of us here in the States may remember him, with his work with Bjork's first band, the Sugarcubes, from 1986 through about 1992. In fact, he's the co-owner of their music label, Bad Taste, which, Smekilesa, I think, anyway. Also a name of a band, I believe, that he was in. We'll ask him about Bad Taste. The Sugarcubes album, the debut album, Life's Too Good, was the first album from an Icelandic band to get worldwide impact and subsequently influenced and inspired Icelandic music musicians and the music scene for generations. Lead singer Bjork later launched a solo career and probably, I think, is the best-selling Icelandic musician of all time. But more recently, Siggy's worked with Emiliana Torrini and many other Iceland artists. He has an alter ego, by the way, by name of Bogom Font, who is the only Calypso singer in Iceland. And on more artsy side, his current projects include an experimental percussion ensemble called Parabolor that utilizes telecommunications, satellite covers, and video. But he's not banging on the drums, singing. He likes to go cod fishing on his kayak outside his home in Kópavogur, Iceland. And by the way, Siggy, join us right now. Come on in and tell us about the wicked Fishballs that you are known to make. There you go.
Hey.
There we go. Siggy, welcome to the Journeys Webcast. Thanks for tuning in.
Thank you, man. Thanks for having me.
How did I do on the bio? Did I,
It's okay.
All right. Well, listen, last time I was with you, I think we were sharing a pint. So I'd like to toast to Iceland, to your career, and to seeing you on the webcast.
Thank you.
That's good. Now, what time is it there for you?
It's 9 in the evening, actually, 9 p.m.
9 p.m. So it's good for you to have a beer. I mean, I guess they say it's 5 o'clock somewhere. So
yes,
and I would we much rather have this conversation in Iceland to there. But people are joining us here, and I just want to give a shout out. Daniel Bremmer, he mentions Afram Kópavogur.
Go Kópavogur, yeah. I live in Kópavogur.
Yeah. Who's he?
Daniel Bremmer. Good question.
No. Well, Daniel, I know Daniel because Daniel actually used to work with me years ago at my company Priscom in Wirestone. He lives in New York City now, I think in Brooklyn, but he's quite a traveler. And by the way, we were talking about beer. He's actually does home brewing too, Daniel. But I'm curious, what's the reference with Afram?
Afram means go, and Kópavogur is my hometown.
Okay, go. Okay, so got it. Okay, we have Ellie from Oceanside, California, tuned in. Rosemary Karstens from the Colorado Rocky Mountains. AJ, is it tuning in for from India? Awesome. And Boomer, Vermont. Okay. Brian Young. Let's see. Last time we rode in Vermont, a cheese shop told us that they had the best. Okay. Brian Young, good to see you. And Brian Hamilton. I think we got a couple of Midwesterners on. So anyway, for those of you who are being shy on the chat, go ahead and let us know who you are and where you're tuning in from. Okay, so let's kind of go back in time, Siggy, for those of us. Well, first thing I wanted to know about the Fishballs. And what are the ingredients for the ultimate fishball?
Cod. Lots of cod, lots of onion, and a little bit of garlic, and some egg, and a little bit of flour, and then you have to go seasonal with the herbs. But we have the herbs blooming right now in Iceland, so I go crazy with whatever I can drag in from the garden. I'm growing all sorts of leeks and stuff.
Oh, nice.
That I like to experiment with. So yes, the fiskebollur is actually fish balls.
Okay. And how do we say your first name appropriately?
In Iceland, well, my American friends used to call me Sigtryggur.
Sigtryggur, okay.
Sigtryggur, yeah. But actually, the pronunciation in Icelandic is a little bit different. It's Sigtryggur. Sigtryggur, yeah.
Sigtryggur. Okay, all right.
But Sigtryggur is okay. That'll do.
Okay, Sigtryggur. All right. Yeah. Very nice. Very nice. Let's go back in time. I'm actually going to pull up a couple quick photos that I want to go back to you as a young lad, and you are still young, by the way. This for those of us who may be geographically challenged, I just wanted to first put up where on the map Iceland sits. It's way in the North Atlantic. You can see it's even more north than the southern tip of Greenland, and it's it's a hop, skip, and a jump on a big boat to Norway, as you can see over there. But I found this photo from an old Rolling Stone magazine article about the Sugarcubes, where they called the Sugarcubes the coolest band in the world back in the late 80s. And we mentioned earlier in there that this album is and we can kind of do that and that so people can see the real thing. This album was the breakout album and put the Iceland music scene and made people think about Iceland music differently. So anyway, let's go back and we'll stop that slide. I think so. You were in kind of a punk band called Kuckle.
Kuckle, yeah. Yeah. Kuckle, yeah.
Kuckle. So how did that evolve into what people now remember as the Sugarcubes?
I was there. That's when I started working with Bjork and Einar. That was in '83. They were the two front singers in Kuckle and also in the Sugarcubes. But the rest of the band got interchanged. The three of us carried on working together through Kuckle and into the Sugarcubes. But we got some new compatriots with us in the second band. Yes, Kuckle actually started going abroad. We never did any big deals or sort of made it into the charts anywhere, but we were making some experimental, interesting music at the time. Back in that was '83 to '86 when we were running that band. But we got a lot of very good experience in that band. We started working with an English label and did a lot of touring in Europe. So we got some. How do you put it? We basically, got some primary experience there to sort of work internationally.
Work internationally and some notoriety, I imagine.
Yeah, a little bit, yeah.
And where was that jump from experimental music into alternative rock? I think Icelandic alternative, maybe if you call it. At the time, how did that bridge? What was that like?
That's a good question. I see Daniel Bremmer was wondering whether the name was really a reference to LSD, and people thought that a lot because of the Sugarcubes. People would ingest LSD with Sugarcubes back in the day, but that's not the case here. The Sugarcubes were actually formed as out of an organization that we formed after Kuckle split up. We sort of were partial in forming an organization, an umbrella organization in Iceland called Bad Taste, which was defined as basically as like an umbrella for the arts, for creative artists in Reykjavik. And after a little while, we decided that we needed to make a pop band to make money for the organization. And it was all tongue in cheek. I mean, it was all a big joke, really. And so we put together this band that was supposed to make pop music, so the Sugarcubes for us were sort of a pop band that was supposed to be making pop music. But it came out kind of twisted and sort of a little weird. But people seemed to like it a lot, and it was kind of strange and off kilter when we were doing it back in '88. And we started working with some friends in England that were forming a label, and guy called
Yeah.
Derek Burkett, who actually still today is Bjork's manager, actually, funny enough.
Oh, isn't really? You know, and think about Iceland now, back there in the late 70s, maybe early 80s, as I remember chatting with you or with somebody in Iceland, that concerts and bands playing in schools were forbidden, right? Isn't that true? Like there weren't a lot of venues for bands at that time.
No, but it wasn't forbidden to play in schools. We did a lot of playing in schools, actually.
Okay.
But there weren't many other venues to play in. But beer was forbidden. You probably crossed your lines there.
Beer was forbidden. So,
yes, beer was illegal till 1989.
It was illegal till 1989. And
you could buy all the Brennivin you wanted, but no beer.
Right. And by the way, Brennivin is the last time I was with Siggy, we were drinking Brennivin, and I know it's available somewhere in the States, and I called everywhere in San Diego today, and nobody is selling it. So whoever's the Brennivin distributor, big opportunity here. But anyway, it's the Icelandic schnapps of sort. It's very, very interesting, and it's very good. And some may say it for an acquired taste, but
yeah. So it's like for those of us who've tried something like aquavit, it's kind of the Icelandic version of aquavit. Okay. It has a little more caraway seed, a little more cumin in it.
Okay. Speaking of herbs, also at the time, and things have changed. Of course, we have this wild new world of the internet. But back then, when you guys were starting, there was only one radio station and one TV station in Iceland, right?
Yeah.
And so the numbers of outlets for promoting bands and things was very limited, wasn't it?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
But there was still a sort of an active art scene in Reykjavik, which spread the word quite well. And I mean, it's a small place. There's only 350,000 people living here. And back in the day, let me see, 40 years ago, 35 years ago, when we were starting out with the Sugarcubes, there was like 250,000 people, 250,000, the whole population.
Yeah. Wow. I mean, that's a fraction of.
You told a couple of your cousins about your band, and all of a sudden everybody knew about it. It was kind of simple.
That's great. Hey, I wanna play a clip of you back in the day and Bjork, and then talk about it on the back end, because this is very fun and very cute. So let's watch this. I just like how she is so in tune to those shoes, and you're just sitting there whistling away. I mean, I've known a lot of drummers in my day, and you with the tennis ball, and you're always moving, man. You got the rhythm. But no, I wasn't going to play the whole thing, but I just thought she was very, very focused on those shoes.
Yes, painting her shoes.
Painting the shoes. I mean, hey.
Yeah.
Hey, when you need to be innovative in the newest fashions in Iceland, this is what we do back then, I guess.
Yes, it's very DIY here.
So you still when's the last time you saw Bjork? And do you guys talk much?
No, we occasionally meet at label meetings. When she occasionally comes to a label meeting, but I don't see her very often these days. She's very, very busy in her own world. Her creative world keeps her very busy. She's a very creative person and keeps very long hours in the studio and at work. She lives in between Iceland and New York, I think, mostly.
Okay. Interesting. Well, speaking of creative, you have quite the diverse projects going on, and I don't even know where to go first. But I think I want to ask you about this that I mentioned here, the Parabolor, where you're doing very experimental percussive music, but using a lot of different things than drums. Tell us about that, and where does that go?
Yeah, shortly after I moved, I lived in the United States and Holland from 93 to 2003, I think. Or early 2004, I moved back to Iceland, and I was doing various projects here, and I found a storage for these old telecommunication satellite covers, which are quite bizarre things. They're sort of conal shaped fiberglass structures, or basically giant drums that have these not skins, they have these fiber heads on the front to basically, and they put them up in masts on the highlands, and this fiber mesh on the front basically moves in the wind, so it breaks the ice off them very easily. It's very slippery material, so ice has a very hard time catching properly on it. It's quite a brilliant thing, but when I saw it, I saw these things in a storage here on the outskirts of town. I thought to myself, Jesus, these are just giant drums. And I had to have a shot. I asked, because they were, the people that owned them were a telecommunications company. And these were basically old telecommunication distribution devices that were basically out of order or out of use, and they were being discontinued. So they had taken them down from the masts all over Iceland and stored them in this crazy big storage on the outskirts of town, where I wandered in one day with some friends. And so I got a hold of the people that owned this stuff, and I got to trash pick it, basically. They were basically about to throw them away or have them recycled somehow. So I got to keep a few of them, and I adapted them. I changed a little bit of the structure of them. I took out basically the big heads. I found a way to stretch them directly onto the frame, so they operated like giant drums. And the cones I fitted with sort of little microphones on the inside, and I ran them through sort of effects processors, so they often sound like electronic percussion.
Oh, interesting.
So I would yes, these were very experimental devices. So I created a whole new sort of set of instruments, and then I started using video with them, and interactive video, where sometimes the video would be triggered by what we were doing. It was a lot of fun, very experimental. I was doing it with a couple of friends of mine, one of which who is actually a very experimental video artist and a musician. So we were collaborating on doing did these performances that were basically like installations.
Interesting, like performance. Well, let's watch a little of this and talk about it at the other end. People probably have never seen anything like this. This is fascinating.
It's a little long.
It's we've put the link, by the way, in the chat room there to that video.
Okay.
Siggy put up there earlier for people if you want to watch that. And I'm going to put up some other links so you can see some, because we're not going to be able to put all of the full length of a lot of this stuff, because speaking of creative, so while Bjork may be having very creative things going on, that is really interesting, especially with that video projection and how you manage it. Where did that idea? I mean, obviously we know where you found that. You just thought these things were like drums, but when you started bringing in that video element and creating it more of a performance experience, was this just something that came to you, or had you been thinking about this for a while?
Yeah, I realized that the big drum has such a huge diameter that you can use it as a screen as well to project video on. And I thought it would be cool to sort of have me as a character playing the thing, and then I move away from it and there's like a picture of me playing the thing. It's like I got like I got sucked into the drum, or actually projected on it.
Yeah, you actually became part of the drum.
Yeah. You
metamorphosized into the drum almost.
You can't really hear it on this recording because the recording is not really so good. But when I moved away from the big drum, the pattern that I'd been playing on the big drum kept on being played by my avatar, who was now playing the big drum on the big drum itself, because I was using loops as well.
Yeah, sequences, loops. Yeah.
Yes. So when I stopped playing that pattern, the loop would take over, and the video was synced with the loop.
Wow.
So that sort of stuff. It's basically just, we were just having fun with a medium, basically.
Yeah. Are you still doing that? Is this
that particular video was shot in 2010, I think.
Okay.
But after I started working at the Iceland Music Office in 2012, I sort of, some of my projects sort of don't have time to do that much anymore. But I have done the occasional performances, yes, with Parabolur, and some of it is actually, there are videos online on YouTube. If you look for Parabolur percussion, you can see some of that still on YouTube. We did a performance in Stockholm once, outside in the frost. That was pretty bitter but fun.
Yeah, cold. But so let's talk about the Iceland music project that you did that kind of has taken on a new life with you. You know, I call you the Godfather of Iceland music scene because you know everybody. And you're very active in, giving artists, creative people, a venue. There's even, I'm going to put up in the column here, by the way, just so people can say that the Iceland Music Office actually has several Spotify playlists segmented into different categories. So if you click that link there, you can get to the Spotify, to the Icelandic music website that has the links to the Spotify playlist. If you want to see what's going on in Iceland and hear some of the very cool music, that's a great place. And it's they're all different categories, so you can kind of pop around and see that. How did Icelandic music start, and how did you become so integrated with it?
Yeah, the office was actually formed in 2007, sort of on a Nordic model. The other Nordic countries had these little music export offices. Well, some of them were big and some were smaller. And there was a visionary here by the name of Anna Hildur who basically thought that we needed to have a government-supported office like that, which is basically a music export office, or like a business development office. so a lot of, and I got involved with it originally because I was on the board for one of the societies here, the writers, music writers society, and they were asked to appoint someone for the board of this new export office, and they knew that I, of course, had worked internationally a lot, so I was sort of an obvious choice for that. So they asked me to come and sit on the board, but then when the director left in 2012 to go and do actually a Nordic music office, which was set up on a Nordic level to coordinate projects on a Nordic on the Nordic panorama, with then the remaining board asked me if I would take over and run the office, and I decided to give it a shot. It wasn't really something that I was looking to do at the time, but I thought it was quite fun.
Yeah, I want to play a bit of another video about how you're encouraging not only you're looking to export, if you will, to find new audiences for Icelandic music, but also encouraging people to embrace Iceland as a place to create music, and also with its vast landscapes and a very creative scene. So let's watch a little bit of this, and we'll talk about how you guys are promoting that. This is fascinating.
I was supposed to come here for 10 days to record, and I never left, and I love it. I love working here. The lack of noise was just incredible. I could sort of hear my own thoughts.
There is like a sense of slowness around us. There's somehow less pace in the community, so you end up getting a little bit more peace to work here than in my experience in other countries.
Very small place with a huge pool of ridiculously talented people. There's a value placed on music here that is unlike other places. It's very easy to kind of pull people in. There's always one weirdo that kind of does that one thing, and he's usually just around the corner.
I think it's great to record here because everything is so close. In this studio, we have a guitar repair guy just downstairs, and we have a synth repair guy just down the hall here.
Reykjavik is the capital of Iceland, and it's got everything that any capital has, which is a lot of culture, great food. The restaurants are amazing here, and at the same time drive for 10 minutes and be in beautiful nature and just nothing around you. That's, I think, pretty unique as well.
I would say if anyone is coming here, they would have no trouble with finding musicians or inspiration in other people or artists if they're just open to it,
Having found a strong connection with myself, with nature and the sort of beautiful support in the people here, you can be in the moment. And I think for me, that's very important when I'm being creative and when I'm working and just in life in general.
Just looking at that scenery brings back so many memories of my time in Iceland. I should take a moment and share some pictures that you may not have seen before, Siggy, of when you and I were when I met you. We were filming our TV show in Iceland, and you were so gracious to spend time with us then. This is upstairs in the office, the export office, right? Is that?
Yeah.
And you actually did a little bit of a performance, and I love that you play with just the hands, no sticks. This is kind of a Siggy signature, I think, is or sometimes with just one stick and one hand. I've noticed in that it's fascinating. And then on the street side with our glorious crew, on the left is of course Jamie, and that's our production assistant John Angus, and you can see the top of Pan's head there as he's adjusting the camera. But that night went on, and I want to kind of relive this for a moment. Now let's talk about other drummers. is Helgi, right? Am I right?
Yeah, it's Helgi Svavar, yeah.
And he is also pretty famous in Iceland, right?
Yeah.
And also, let's see if I have this right. This is his tattoo, which
Yes.
is very Icelandic with the fish. And speaking of the boats, you were singing that song with Bjork, and right in the background in this pub that we were in, that's kind of one of those old fishing boats.
Yeah.
So yeah, that was great. So Helgi, tell us what he's doing and how he's doing, and let people know.
Helgi's in a very popular band here called Hjalmar, which means helmet, and the helmets the helmets are Iceland's premier reggae band, very popular here.
Reggae, so
reggae band, yeah.
Hmm.
But they do their sort of own take on reggae. They're not like, they don't sound like a Jamaican reggae band, but they do dabble in the reggae and do their own twist on it. He's a fantastic drummer. He also plays in other combinations, and he was with me in the Calypso band.
Okay.
We made a record back in 2006 where we played together.
Yeah.
He also runs a small production company here and produces film and also adverts and stuff like that.
Okay. Yeah, that was a fantastic evening, long day, as anything. As we know right now, Iceland, it's now about 9:45 there, and it's pretty much still sunny outside, isn't it? Yeah.
Oh yeah. You want to see out my window?
Yeah. Let's look out the window. This is 10 p.m. in Reykjavik, or near Reykjavik, outside.
Kópavogur, actually.
Okay. Yeah, look at that. See, this is amazing. It's hard to go to sleep. You can keep working, keep being creative there.
Yeah.
It looks like Daniel. I didn't know this, but he lived in Iceland for about a year, and that's how he knows some people and knew somebody in the video. Brian Hamilton is up in Madison, and he's asking what brought you to Madison. He knows that you were living in Madison for a while.
Yeah. I did live in Madison for a few years, and I did do some work at Smart Studios, and I did meet with Butch and Steve and hang out with them a bit. Great guys, and I really enjoyed living there. It was a very nice place, Madison, Wisconsin. It's sort of a little haven in Wisconsin, which is largely farming community. But it's a little sort of lefty haven out there.
Lefty.
They call it the Berkeley of the Midwest, actually.
Okay.
Yeah, I met some good friends there, and it had actually quite a lively music life. Madison. It had a wonderful studio called Smart Studios, which was run by a guy called Butch Vig, who recorded the Nirvana record. What was it called? Nevermind, and made some seminal recordings there. He also had his own band called Garbage in the mid-90s.
Garbage! I remember that. Yeah,
fantastic band. Yeah.
Hey.
Yes, but the Midnight Sun. I mean, in June you have sun at midnight. That's why this is the land of the midnight sun.
And in that video we saw for a moment the Aurora Borealis, or as people call it, the Northern Lights. You have to go there. You have to be in Iceland, not during the midnight sun. You have to be there in the winter time.
Yeah. To answer your question, sorry, I'm going off the rails here. I was actually chasing my wife to Madison. She was doing a PhD in biochemistry, but I was up for trying out new places. I did spend the first year of living in the States doing a lot of work in Chicago. I was just working as a session player in Chicago, and then I formed a US version of Bad Taste and tried releasing some and producing some records in Chicago. Met some great people there, Although that didn't work out really so well. But so I ended up spending more time in Madison and starting to do more work at Smart Studios, both producing local bands and also making. This was the mid-90s, so the computers were coming very much onto the scene as production tools. And there was a company in Madison that made one of the first loop-based music production programs called Acid.
Oh, yes.
Yep.
Yes.
They were a company called Sonic Foundry. They also made a program called SoundForge, which was a very popular SoundForge. Yes, which is a very popular mastering program. Mid-90s, mid to late 90s. So I started making records of drum loops for them, and spent many a day sort of drumming away in Smart Studios.
That's hilarious. I'm going to back up to your pre-Madison days and back to you touring with Bjork and the Sugarcubes. You got to be you had an incredible tour with a very famous band, and I'd love for you to share a little story about those days and what you did.
We did actually. You mean our last tour was in the States with U2.
Yes, you were backing up U2.
Yeah, we're backing up U2 and Public Enemy as well. Well, we were the support bands, us and Public Enemy, for U2 back in '92.
Okay,
which was actually quite fun. And that was, yes, we did go on, get up to some kooky antics, of course. I mean, we were usually the first band on stage. So by the time that U2 got done with their show, we were usually in good form.
You were in good form. I mean, you were traveling with them on their jet, right?
Yes, they ended up inviting us to travel once on their jet. I think they only invited us
only once.
Yes, because we were the first people on the jet, and by the time they got on, we were pissed in the back, just getting very drunk. And some tomfoolery.
Some tomfoolery. You shared a story with me. Yeah, you shared a story with me about a time when you were in San Diego, and you met a poet. I would love for you to share this story for all of us watching today.
Right, there was a wonderful guy that started coming to our hotel in San Diego. That was on our first tour in the States in 1988. This young guy who was only 12, I don't know, roughly 20, 21 maybe. And he had a little white Beetle, and he was a poet, told us he was a poet, and he worked in a gas station. And he came to meet the Sugarcubes, not just because of the music, but because he heard that there were like 3 published poets in the band. And we had some close collaborations in Iceland with this sort of literary circles. And certainly because we had formed, the band grew out of Bad Taste, which was like this artist organization, which had started releasing actually books of poetry and stuff like that before we ever made a record. So yes, and he was interested in the poetry stuff, and when we asked him about his name, he told us his name was Eddie Vedder, and he later went on to become a very famous musician. But back in those days, he was a huge poetry fan and was writing a lot. He was writing a lot of poetry. And he was reading some of his stuff to us. And him and Bragi, our bass player, who is actually a published writer in Iceland, who quit actually playing the bass in 93, when the Sugarcubes disbanded in 92? Yeah, 92 probably. He basically parked his bass guitar, and he sold his bass guitar and basically bought a pen and started writing.
It seems that you could coexist with that. in other ways. Wow, that's amazing. So Eddie Vedder was kind of trolling the Sugarcubes because of the poets in the bands.
Yeah, and he met us a few times. When we came to San Diego, he'd show up at the hotel. He'd somehow sniff us out, man. I don't know how he did it, but
and he was working at a gas station. Well, this has got to be the best Eddie Vedder story. There. Hey, you were we were in the green room before we went live on the webcast today, and you were practicing or rehearsing a little bit. Is that uke nearby? Would you mind plucking a couple?
The ukulele, yeah. I was actually working on an old Calypso called "The Weatherman's Lying." It's actually written in Trinidad and Tobago by a guy called Roaring Lion. Probably, well, his name was Rafael de Leon. He had the artist name of Roaring Lion, and this is probably back in the mid-40s when he writes this song called "The Weatherman's Lying." We did an Icelandic version of it, but because we thought the lyrics were so fitting for Iceland. It's about how you can never trust the weatherman. I'll play you a little piece of it. It goes like, the weatherman's lying. You can't believe a single word that he says. The weatherman's lying. His forecast always leaves you in dismay. If he says biscuit, then it's lollipop. If he tells you to run, better not to stand up. So if you don't want to be left in a fit, whatever he says to do the opposite. The weatherman's lying. You can't believe a single word that he says. The weatherman's lying. His forecast always leaves you in dismay, etc. The lyrics are very funny. I recommend this. Totally.
Well, I'm going to queue up another video and we want to talk about Calypso, but this here is, what do we say? Bogomil font.
Bogomil, yes.
Bogomil font. Here we go.
Á mig lífin og ekkert lengur gengur. Ég reyna að gleyma öllu og fara svo í frí. Já, fjárbóndinn góður, hann flytur allt úr landi. Féð jú fælið og forðast ljósið bjart og til kastana kemur. Ég kýs að muna minna, því gleymskan glúrin og gasanið sem kýr. Ég veit ekki neitt, ég man ekki neitt, ég gerð ekki neitt, ekki neitt sem lent. Já, ég veit ekki, nei, 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 nei.
That I mean, you know, from the island nation to the islands, I feel like we're in the islands there. That is, you got a beautiful voice, and I love the sound. The band is so good. How did you end up as this alter ego of Bogomil font, and what does that mean?
That's a good question. In 1989, when we were doing a very long Sugarcubes tour, we'd been on the road for about 2 months, and we found ourselves in Zagreb, in
Croatia. Yeah.
Yes, in Croatia. And, or was it in Ljubljana? Yeah.
Okay.
We actually were in the old, back in '89, it was still Yugoslavia.
That's right.
Yes, this is pre-war, pre-Civil
Pre-war.
War there. And so we found ourselves in Ljubljana, and me and Braille, my bass player, we were having some fun going out to have a bite, and we found ourselves in the bar of the hotel, which had a very surreal feel because the bartender was actually dug down. He was standing in a pit, and everybody else was just sitting sort of regular level. And it had a very absurd quality to it and slightly surreal. So we started fantasizing about creating like a jazz band where everyone had a pseudonym. It was like a theater group. Basically, everybody, let's create a jazz band where most people actually can't play the instrument that they're trying to play. It has to be like a fantasy band. Everybody has to play or try to play an instrument that they've always wanted to play. That was the concept. And I created this. I thought to myself, yeah, I'll create this sort of lounge singer that will and then we went out to dinner, and there was on the table there was like a, what do you call it, a calendar with the names of saints for different days. And I found that the saint of my birthday was a saint called Bogomil. So I got the name. We carried on fantasizing about this sort of kooky project, this art project, a jazz band called Conrad B's Jazz Orchestra. And we ended up forming this band actually with lots of people that were actually on our label, because by that time, Smackless, Our Bad Taste, had basically morphed into a record label. So there was quite a few sort of funny, creative bands on our label, and we were sure that we could entice some of these people to form this big orchestra with us that couldn't really play, but really tried to. And so we just found this amazingly funny at the time. So we ended up creating this jazz orchestra, Conrad B, and did a few performances where we actually, I would say, pretty much murdered famous jazz tunes and and had a lot of fun doing it. But everybody had to dress up and sort of ladies had to wear sort of dresses, and the guys were all wearing suits and hats and stuff. It was like a fancy dress party gone wrong. But we had a blast of a time. We had a really good time. And that's where I created this sort of lounge singer character that has since gone on to do all sorts of stuff.
Wow.
He sort of got yes, he was given life there at the end of 1990, I believe. Yeah. And since then, I started fooling around with this character and did all sorts of projects. I created the first in '92 when the Sugarcubes were actually disbanding. I formed a small mambo band with some friends here in Iceland. It was called Bogomil Font and the Millionaires. And because the joke was we didn't have a dime to our name, because after the Sugarcubes split up, we'd spent all our advances. So I didn't have much money after I came back off the last tour, and I needed to do something.
you need to pay the bills.
Yeah, basically. So I formed this mambo band with some friends of mine, because I was always into Latin music very much. I never much sort of listened to the same type of music that I was playing. So when I was in the Sugarcubes, I was never listening to sort of indie rock of any shape, form, or manner. I was always into sort of Latin music or all sorts of world music and jazz and stuff.
So there's a big festival every year in Iceland. That's part of your office, I think, puts that on. Is that true, or?
Yes, we do the conference part of a showcase festival here called Iceland Airwaves.
Yeah.
And my office is very involved with the conference part of that festival.
And as far as what's going on now with COVID, Iceland's fared very well, haven't you guys?
Yes. I mean, it's a very small country with a very good health system and a lot of belief in science. So The government actually put all their faith in science, sort of had the scientists take over the asylum when this COVID thing hit. And so they created a program which basically worked really well. So they isolated it very well, and they didn't have much of a spread of the disease. But yeah, I mean, you can get away with that in small places, but I mean, bigger places have done the same thing. But
sure.
So yes, I guess we were lucky in a sense that we had good management in that crisis.
So airwaves will happen. It hasn't canceled like so many things here in the United States.
No, it's actually, they're also lucky in the sense that it is very late in the year. It is in the first, it's in the first weekend of November.
Okay.
Some funny comments here.
Okay, yeah. Calypso a la
Sinatra, Jay. Exactly. So, yeah, absolutely.
And Daniel's asking of the Mum album.
Yes.
What you can answer that?
Any chance of the Mum album Locksins? Erum við engin coming out on vinyl? I never saw it in Iceland, but found it on CD in California. Yeah, I can't answer that actually. I have no idea.
Wow. Leave it to Daniel, looking for an old Iceland thing on vinyl. I love you, Daniel.
No, I mean, yeah. I've got a lot of good vinyl. A lot of stuff is being re-released on vinyl now.
Sure. My turntable and my vinyl is buried in a closet here in my cottage. I keep saying one day I'm going to break that out. You'd think during COVID would be a good time to do this, but I'm doing these webcasts. I'm doing all these other
keeping busy.
Yeah, definitely. So I love this alter ego. I also put up a poll, by the way, and people are starting to answer. We know Daniel lived here, but so at least those who have answered our poll, half of the people say they've never been to Iceland, and then the other half say that they haven't, but they want to. That's on their list. What would you say would be the top 3 things for someone? Maybe not why to come to Iceland, but when they get there, what should they do? I mean, there's so many.
Depends on what people like, of course. I mean, not everyone likes the same things. If you're into hiking, you should definitely do some hiking. There's some magnificent landscapes here, some fantastic things to see. There's some great fishing if you like trout fishing or cod fishing, as I do. I've got a small kayak and I just row out from my house and go catch some cod. But I also go trout fishing. I'm going actually salmon fishing in the morning.
Oh, wow.
There's some great fishing here. There's great arts here. The arts are very interesting. The creative industries are thriving. Throbbing and thriving. The music scene is very interesting. It's very diverse, actually. And what we do a lot is, I'll get to that later, but there's a lot of stuff to be had here, both culturally and also visually, hikingly.
Well, what about this right here? Because this is something I didn't know about, and I actually I can't say that I went into it, but we were right near this the night that you and I met.
Mm-hmm.
Tell us about the Penis Museum. Speaking of throbbing, the Icelandic Theological Museum.
Yes.
I mean, you talk about creative. How long has this been there? Do you know anything about its origins?
Yes, I can actually tell you a little bit about its origin. It was formulated by a guy who's a wonderful nutcase, but probably very clever businessman, in a small town called Húsavík.
I've been to Húsavík.
Yes, you've been to Húsavík. And Húsavík is also the main setting for a new film by Will Ferrell called Eurovision. Yes, and it's about a musician that grows up in this small town of Húsavík. But the Theological Museum was set up there originally by a guy who had an uncanny interest in the male sex organ. And he started collecting it from all species. That was the thing. He has whale penises in there and all penises from all sorts of animals. He actually has a human penis in there that was donated by a guy. Yes, you would think so, wouldn't you?
Yes.
So yes,
not donated by his wife anyway. Right.
Yes, possibly.
Lovely, yeah.
Yes, and it's been around probably for like. I first heard of it probably in 2005 or 6.
Mm-hmm.
I think it was, yes, it was launched probably 2005, 2006. You can look it up on Wikipedia, I'm sure.
Yeah.
In this little town of Húsavík. Then it moved to Reykjavik probably like, I don't know, 10 years ago, and set up just around the corner from my office. But funnily, I've never been there. I did go to it once when it was in Húsavík, and I didn't like the smell of the place.
Well, there's something to be said. So it for somebody that might be a reason to come to see the only one in the world to come to Iceland. But there's certainly some great nature. I noticed that you're fiddling there because you're the drummer with what's not a drumstick, but it could be used as one. And I know that. Yes, and we also play. We know drummers have brushes, but do you actually paint as well?
Not much. No. I do a little drawing, but my daughters are both avid painters.
Okay.
One is 17 and the other one is 30. It's like 13 years between them. But they both paint, funny enough.
Yeah. And you just got back from a bit of a holiday with your daughter, right?
Yeah.
What you guys
in Sweden? I went to Gothenburg to visit her family. And we were sailing in the archipelago outside of Gothenburg. How do you pronounce that word?
Archipelago.
Archipelago. There you go.
Yes. A string of islands. Yes.
A string of islands. It's funny bit with this boat business in there's a documentary about the Penis Museum called The Final Member. I love that.
The Final Member. Oh. Hey.
Oh, that's funny.
This is good. Well, you always
you forgot to tell me how long we're on.
Well, we're actually, usually it's an hour, but I've been getting very lax in that. I know you're a busy guy, so I'm not going to keep you on, but we should wind down. Oh, look, my sister-in-law is tuned in, and she is very excited about the Penis Museum. I'm sure. All right, Maria. Thanks for tuning in. Yeah, so you were about to tell us about what you're doing now and what you usually do in your little community. I know you're doing some gardening and things like that. So maybe as we wind this down, give us a little about what we can expect from Siggy in the future, and what are you doing just to have fun and to but besides fishing, we know you love that and
gardening. I'm doing a lot of gardening in the garden, and I'm doing a bit of sort of traveling around Iceland because there's no tourists here now. Well, they're starting to come around.
Okay,
but it's maybe 15% of what it's been in the last 5 years. The tourism here has basically exploded since about 2012. And but this year, right now, it's just a fraction of what it is usually. So us Icelanders are taking the advantage and sort of traveling around the country a lot more. all of a sudden you go to these popular tourist places and you're the only person there. It's kind of a luxury problem. But so yes, I'm traveling around.
Okay.
With the family. I'm working. We're doing my office has had to reshuffle a lot of projects, of course, like a lot of people have. So we're creating a new website now, which is basically pulling together a lot of educational information for musicians into one site. These things tend to get sort of buried in websites all around the place.
So you're aggregating it all together.
Yeah. We're pulling it all together and sort of trying to create the ideas to basically, yes, in the long run, we're creating better export-ready material from Iceland.
Yeah.
So people are a little bit more aware of how the blessed music business works internationally, because we live in a bit of a little bubble here, which is kind of comfy.
Sure. Well, you know, that video I played earlier, just, it's so inspiring to how many people are taking advantage of, I mean, obviously we're in different times of the 25% rebate. And as I understand, even travel costs are covered if they.
Yeah. No, it's been a lot of growth in the last 2 years. Well, last year, since we started promoting this internationally, we've had a lot of requests for this program, and basically it's a rather simple rebate program. Mm-hmm. Programs like this exist quite a lot in like the film business, not only here but in other places as well. I know New Zealand has a program like this, and Norway and Scotland, I think, and other places. Ireland definitely has been getting a lot of film work over to Ireland, where they are actually offering these rebate programs. But we got the government to extend this to music as well, so people can come here and record and get basically 25% off their whole recording cost, and that includes their flights. So in the last few months, I've been asking people to look at this from different angles, because when people start traveling again, and say American bands are going to Europe to play, if they do a stopover in Iceland and do some recording here in some of the wonderful studios that are here, they can actually offset all their travel costs as well by 25%, which is not stupid.
No, it's not. There's one piece I want to play a little bit of once more, and if we can keep you on for another maybe 5 minutes, because I come back to the diversity and your creativity, and there probably was a point in the when what's his name Sim what some of the early electronic drums, but when the drum machine Simmons, yeah. When some drummers were wondering if they would be put out of business by a drumming machine, but that's not separate. But let's watch this video, because this is so cool. There is that signature one stick, or in this case a brush, and the hand, that Siggy signature. Very cool. I love just the environment. The you could see the fans turning in the background. I mean, the way it was shot was so good. But this has got another Siggy creation in it. Share with us what that is.
Yeah, the vocal machine. Yes, it was an in-joke. Yeah, this was a project that I did called Sigtryggur, which was two drummers creating music together. Mm-hmm. And I programmed all the stuff and played other instruments, of course, but live we enjoyed playing drums and tabla. And my partner Steingrimur was the only tabla player in Iceland. so
there's a small pool of tabla players there.
Yeah. And our in-joke was that, so in the 90s, 80s and 90s, when we were growing up, there was so much talk by drummers about the drum machines, and people had sort of this love-hate relationship with drum machines that they would actually put us all out of business, the drummers. So we thought, as an in-joke, we'll just create a vocal machine. So I sat up a whole evening sort of gluing rocks onto an old television that I had found in a trash bin, and created a video of my own mouth, actually, just mouthing these vocals that I had edited onto this track. These were old Icelandic chants from the library.
So you created a vocal machine. So take that, you vocalist. No drum machines.
Yes.
I have a few photos to show. I mean, we got some. These are congas, right? These.
Yeah.
And great sound. So that's there. And here you are. Do you recognize this photo? Do you know where this was taken?
This is actually taken during my Sugarcubes days. This is in a rehearsal space that we had. Yeah. So rehearsal space we used to have. With rehearsing there. It's just yes, and I had this. Yes, and that's another good.
Yeah, this is fascinating. There's a story here, and I think we should hear this story.
Really? Did I tell you a story about this?
No. I'm assuming that there's a story behind this because it's.
No, I got to. Yes, I actually got. I found an unused power station that I got. I wangled my way into because I needed this big space to store the parabolas, and they were kind of hard to get into normal rehearsal spaces. So, but I found this unused power station that I got a hold of and was allowed to be sort of the janitor for a while. They were going to tear it down, but they'd rather have someone staying there and working there rather than have it squatted or basically just kids ruining it. So I got to use it as a workspace for like a year and a half, and I really enjoyed that. And I set up, I had all sorts of instruments set up all around and was just doing a lot of recording.
So very industrial. Yeah.
I made a record there called Trappa, Trappa. It's available on Spotify for those who are interested. But I did that with an Australian musician living in Iceland called Ben Frost.
Okay.
He was a bit of a soundscape genius and, a wonderful composer. So, yes, we did a lot of experimentation there.
Well, there's no question that you've experimented with so many realms. Pop music, obviously, early days punk. We've seen the voice machine, the Calypso singer. It would have been nice to see that jazz group, the Millionaires. Would have been. What's something about Iceland you think people? We'll wind this down now, Sig, and I'll let you go. It's been just so much fun, and it might be time for another beer. What would you like people to take away from your Iceland music and the Icelandic culture?
Yeah, there's a lot of interesting culture here. I always recommend books. There's some wonderful authors, Icelandic authors, and literature has always been sort of the big thing here until we have like a famous author in Iceland who won the Nobel Prize back in '56. He was sort of a legend here for a long time. He used to be the most famous Icelandic person until Bjork sort of stole that crown. But his books are wonderful. And his name is Laxness, Laxness. And he's a wonderful writer. But there's a lot of modern literature here, which I enjoy a lot as well. There's a lot of... What?
Yeah, I met a guy who ran for president there, is also a writer.
He's
got some interesting kind of a science fiction or something, right? Futuristic.
Yes, I mean, he's written sort of non-fiction books as well, very scientific leaning. He wrote a wonderful book that's called Of Time and Water. That's his newest book. It's about sort of memoirs regarding time and water. He's really interested in environment. He's a big environmentalist, put it that way.
Right.
And,
Yeah.
and yes, we are quite concerned about the environment here. I mean, here in the north, the glaciers are melting pretty fast, and it's, I mean, all this COVID bullshit has really sort of taken away a lot of the environmental impact that was happening last year. Sort of awareness, I would say, amongst people in general, right, which I think is very important, and we mustn't sort of forget that. We did a few projects environmentally leaning as well. We created a couple of, because we had to do a lot of flying from Iceland, and we support musicians in actually traveling abroad. We created a tree planting project we did last summer, where we invited musicians to come and plant trees up on the highlands, which was a lot of fun. We did a few trips.
Wow, nice.
Planted a lot of trees. You can see stuff about that on our website.
You know, when I was in Husavik, I went out on a whale watching boat that was, for the most part, a carbon neutral. You know, they solar powered, but also wind powered, obviously, with sails. You know, an old, as opposed to going out and burning a bunch of fossil fuel.
Yeah.
It was a very neat experience to go out and not hear an engine while you're out in the North Atlantic.
Yes, that's one of my newest loves. Is basically I bought a sailing boat in Sweden and been sailing the archipelago out there, and just sailing boats is really second to none. It's really brilliant.
Yeah. That just the you speak of water. Andre's book, you know, water and it was water and what? I remember the water.
Time and water.
Oh, water and time. You know, you can just hear the of the water as you're sailing. It's been a long time since I've sailed, but I walk along the beach most every day here. It's not too far away, and the sound of the surf is just that kind of peaceful serenity, even though it can be ferocious. Well, I guess it's still sunny there, but I should let you get to whatever you're doing there. I want to thank you for your time today, for tuning in, and I look forward to the time where we can actually we can do this face to face. So,
absolutely.
Cheers. Yeah. And thank everybody else who's tuned in. Thank Siggy Baldursson. Did I say that right?
Baldursson.
Baldursson. Okay. And tune in next week for the Journeys webcast. This webcast will be up on YouTube, so you can watch a replay of it sometime ended tomorrow. But Siggy, it's been awesome just to spend time like this, as if we were, you know, in a pub or in your studio. And the ukulele, the uke. Do you have a what do you call it? A lullaby that you should play a couple notes of before we get off the air?
Og leif mér þig að leifa landsins fjalla heiða af sælu sundin löng, af sælu sundin löng, rangar blóma breiðar við blíðan fugla söng, rangar blóma breiðar við blíðan fugla söng. something like that.
Thank you. That was beautiful. All right. Well, have a great evening, and let's stay in touch for sure. People on the webcast and watching the replay, hey, as soon as the things open up, get over there and see Iceland, the music. And in the meantime, click that link in the profile for playlists on Spotify for some of the hot new Iceland music and artists.
Absolutely. Thanks again.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Cheers.
Thank you for tuning in to the Journeys Webcast. I'm Allan Karl, your host. Be sure to tune us in every Monday. The time changes depending on where we are in the world. This is Allan Karl, and where will your next journey take you? Thank you. Thank you so much, Siggy. We'll see you soon.
That was fun. Thanks. Cheers, man.
Cheers.
Bye-bye.